Islam is for everyone. I'm sure some of us heard that or saw the big ads regarding states that Islam is for everyone. Quran is identified as the word of Allah and Muslims supposed to follow it. But Sheikh Yasir Qadhi recently expressed, actually, certain verses in the Quran is not for those people who live in western part of the world. While Islam is for everyone, but Islam cannot be for people who live in western part of the world. Why? Because they simply go against human rights. Surah 4 verse 24 is one of the, there are many, one of the disturbing verse in the Quran which talks against woman, where Allah with all of his wisdom allows husband to beat the wife. Allah with all of his wisdom allows husband to beat the wife. First, if you fear that your wife is going to be disobedient, you admonish them and then banish them from the bed and scourge them. Or you go with the Sahih International Translation and then it says strike them. The word means beat them actually. So you beat them, and not like you just beat them with the handkerchief or toothbrush. Don't fall into those traps. Allah with all of his wisdom, he didn't know about handkerchief and toothbrush. When this verse is being put in the Quran and when Allah gives right to a husband to beat their wife, Yasir Qadhi recently put fatwa and he simply expressed, practice this verse, practice advise your wife, practice separate the bed from your wife, but skip the third part, which is beat them, because it doesn't go with the Western values. He put a fatwa against the word of Allah and then told Muslims to skip the third part of this verse. Of course, let's get to hear from him.
And the Quran does give 3 steps, which is the famous verse of Surah An-Nisa, which number 1, Allah says, advise her, فَعِضُوهُنَّ, right? Tell her that marriage is not going to flourish this way. I mean, it's not fair. What do you expect me to do? Marriage has to be based on love. فَعِضُوهُنَّ, ask her of her rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number 2, leave her in her bed. So abandon her. You go to the bedroom, to the living room, and you leave her in the bedroom. You make her understand that things are getting serious. The third thing that is mentioned in the Quran, my philosophy or my fatwa is that in the cultures that we live in, this is an option, A, B, or C. It's not wajib. If you have to get to C, my advice is jump over C and move to divorce. Then if it's really not working and you're not able to get to the marital happiness, فَعِضُوهُنَّ وَهْجُرُوهُنَّ, and then in the society and the times and the cultures that we live in, resorting to option C is going to break the marriage. There is the point of option C when it was done in other societies and times, it might have saved the marriage. In some cultures, option C might have saved the marriage. But in the cultures, I'm talking about Western cultures in particular, I'm not speaking of any other culture, but definitely the Western cultures that we are born and raised in, option C is going to completely break the marriage. It's not going to flourish. So if there is no hope from option A and B, jump over option C and then Bismillah, the marriage is not working out, it's not obligatory to remain married, and so Allah will take care of each one of them and find their happiness. Don't prolong the marriage when it's not working out.
I guess we all heard, sharp and clear, very well articulated, so in the future, so he doesn't say like I picked the wrong words. He doesn't want Muslims to practice Surah 4 verse 34 in its fullness. Practice the first part, advise your wife, forsake them in the bed, and then when you come to the third part which says beat them, jump over. Don't do that. Don't do that, because Sheikh Yasir Qadhi knows it breaks the marriage. It causes more problem. But sadly, Allah didn't know that, and sadly, Muhammad, whom's supposed to be the walking Quran and best example, didn't know that. He practiced that. Allah allowed husband to beat their wife, But according to Sheikh Yasir Qadhi, no, that's gonna break the marriage. Don't do it. Quran's supposed to be for all the times, but apparently it's not for 21st century. It's not only Quran not for Western culture, but as I said, Quran is not for 21st century. So that was the quick fatwa from Sheikh Yasir Qadhi against the word of Allah, against Surah 4, verse 34. Please do take his advice on and do not beat your wives. You need to share life with them. You have responsibility to one another, and one of your responsibility is to respond to one another in love. Ignore Allah, ignore examples of Muhammad, but in this occasion, please take the fatwa which Sheikh Yasir Qadhi put forward, tells you jump over, skip the part where it says beat your wife, and simply get hold on and get divorced.